That was a tune called O'Carroll's Quarrel with His Landlady, written by Taylor O'Carroll around about 1700, something like that possibly. And if you don't know, Taylor O'Carroll was an Irish harp player, blind. He toured the big houses in Ireland at that time, composing tunes in honour of various notables, usually, to pay for his keep. He was sort of begging, a high-class beggar, I suppose, in a sense. But anyway, that one, O'Carroll's Quarrel with His Landlady. We don't know who that landlady was and what the quarrel was about. But he was a fairly boisterous character, apparently. But he did write some lovely tunes. Anyway, I played that tune. That's quite a tricky tune to play on the guitar, actually. Anyway, O'Carroll's Quarrel with His Landlady. Talking about quarrels and arguments and literary disputes and debates and all that sort of thing. Just happened to, we had that list come out, and I made a little video about it, the Guardian's list. And then I was thinking about it, how do you judge the merits of literary works, novels in this case? And I remembered I'd got this book, Literary Theory, Terry Eagleton, an introduction. And I have read it many years ago, so I couldn't really remember much about it, but I thought I'd have another dip into it and see if I could. I remember when I first read it being absolutely baffled, really. He is a good writer, Terry Eagleton. He's a great authority, if you haven't heard of him. A professor of literature in, well, it was Wadham College, Oxford, and he's left there and gone elsewhere now, but he's still around. He writes for the London Review of Books, amongst other things. He's also, I've never met him or anything, but he's also he's a very quarrelsome character. He's had lots of fierce disputes with Richard Dawkins because Terry Eagleton's Catholic and strong in his Christian faith. And a Marxist as well. But anyway, they've had sort of fairly public disputes. I've seen him interviewed on telly, and he often gets into fairly fierce arguments with people. So, but this literary theory, anyway, it begins well, shall I say well, in terms of being able to understand it. And he's saying that literary criticism didn't really begin till about the Victorian era, really, 19th century with Matthew Arnold, he says, and then he goes on to talk about F.R. Leavis, who was a famous critic. He was at Cambridge University, very influential, notoriously argumentative and difficult. Again, I never met him personally. I'm sort of relieved about that in a sense. But Leavis came out with the it was the canon of English literature, the great novels. He did it about other poetry and other things as well, but he came out with this list, the merits. He judged what they were, and it comes in for some ferocious criticism from people like Stephen Fry, the celebrity that studied under him, and people are very rude about Leavis, but he does sound an incredibly annoying person. I think for me anyway, being too authoritative and taking yourself so seriously. I think, to be fair to Leavis, probably English literature, it was good to have an authority figure, like he was, to sort of set some boundaries and this, that, and the other, and at least start debates, just like this 100 list, 100 best novels list has done. So it started things off. But I mean, Leavis, he had his canon, the CANON of English literature, which did include American novels as well. But he left out Charles Dickens because he accused Dickens of just being entertainment. And really, I suppose, novels can have serious purpose, of course. When you think of, Zola's Germinal or things, well, Dickens though, actually. Hard Times, trying to show up defects in society and give voice to people who don't have a voice, and Dickens did that. But anyway, Leavis left Dickens out, which I think is bizarre. But he was an authority, and for a while you couldn't argue with him. I mean, he had this magazine Scrutiny. Everything's super serious, It sounds like the last thing you want to do is enjoy reading this stuff. It's not to be enjoyed. It's far more serious than that. So me struggling with Mr. Eagleton's literary theory book. It is good, actually. It starts and it does give you some insight into what it is about literary theory that's important, and he's a good writer. The subject matter, though, is so obscure, arcane, and challenging that no matter how good a writer you are, you're going to be really struggle. So chapter 1 is the rise of English. Fine, that's good. That's the first 50 odd pages. But then the next chapter is called Phenomenology, Hermeneutics and Reception Theory. So it begins by talking about Husserl, Edmund Husserl, and then Heidegger, yeah, who was his disciple. And this kind of stuff is just impenetrable, to me at least, anyway. So phenomenology, hermeneutics, reception theory. And then it gets worse. And then it gets really serious. Structuralism and semiotics. Post-structuralism, psychoanalysis. Anyway, I've only read the first 2 chapters. I didn't manage to get through phenomenology, hermeneutics and reception theory. But I'm none the wiser, to be honest. That's not why I read books. I wonder if Leavis had Agatha Christie and Raymond Chandler in the canon. I've a strange feeling that he didn't. But I did an MA in Victorian Studies, though, and one of the things we did on that course, it was at Leicester University, and one of the things they did, which I thought was good, was to look at popular novels in the Victorian era. And obviously Dickens was popular, and some good writers were popular, but there are also others. There was somebody called she was called Mrs. Henry Wood. She didn't even have her own name. Mrs. Henry Wood. Anyway, she wrote a novel called East Lynne. I've got it here. You won't find this anywhere, I don't suppose, anymore, but it was at one time phenomenally popular, and there was a play as well. Mrs. Henry Wood. But these kind of novels, there were other people like her as well. The names escape me at the moment, but they'll never get into the literary canon. But actually reading this, it was a very enjoyable read. It involves a really implausible scenario where there's a woman separated from her children somehow. I can't remember all the details. And her husband marries somebody else and takes the children, and she turns up as a governess or nursemaid or something just to be with her children, and they don't recognise her. It just seems a little bit unlikely. But it is a very enjoyable read. High Victorian, you know, and melodrama and that kind of thing. But very enjoyable. And these kind of books like this are just sidelined, aren't they? There's not great literature or anything. I mean, it's not bad writing. It starts in an easy chair of the spacious and handsome library of his townhouse sat William, Earl of Mount Severn. His hair was grey, the smoothness of his expansive brow was defaced by premature wrinkles, and his once attractive face bore the pale, unmistakable look of dissipation. One of his feet was cased in folds of linen as it rested on a velvet ottoman, speaking of gout as plainly as any foot ever spoke yet. I mean, that's quite amusing, that's quite good. Speaking foot. So anyway, one of the things that attracts me to Booktube really is the lack of too much earnest seriousness. That's refreshing, really. And I think it's unique because if you do look at literary criticism, it's always the big, heavy, serious stuff that gets talked about and discussed. And as we all know, not all Booker Prize winners are that great or worth reading. Popularity is probably something that a lot of them would crave, actually, if they could do it. It's like with writing popular songs, you know, writing a hit pop song. They look easy, but until you try and do it, it's extraordinarily difficult. It's a skill. So it's a skill to write, you know, in the style of some of these so-called genre or lowbrow writers, I think, to write well in that, because a lot of people are doing it. So to rise above and become popular is maybe more difficult than writing some kind of literary epic that is talked about in the London Review of Books. But anyway, it just made me think about it a little bit. Thank you very much, Booktubers.